Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope everything's going great as always and your week is going good and everything. And this video is going to be stories from the UK again. That we have one from Galloway Forest in Scotland. It's in Scotland, I think. And the other one is a viewer story about something in the woods. So definitely, if that sounds like your cup of tea, then pull up a stump and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. Camping and exploring were pretty much my main two pastimes a few years back. Anyone who lives in the UK can tell you that decent places to camp are pretty few and far between, unless you want to stay on some shitty campsite with families and, the not so good people that you find there. So we used to find out of the way places to do some illegal camping, even if it took us a bit of hiking to get to a good spot. Woods are pretty sparse too, of any decent size anyway, and what me and my friends were looking for was some decent sized woods to get lost in and settle down for a few days. You know, the type of place where you couldn't hear cars or see lights from towns, etc. So this happened when we drove about 5 hours to get to the biggest woodland in the UK, Galloway Forest Park. About 300 square miles of forest. It was me and my friends, Ryan, Callum, and Chris. We ended up driving up there in Ryan's, broken down Astra because we were planning on leaving the car somewhere and hiking to get a good spot, and Callum didn't want to leave his BMW on the side of the road in Scotland for the better part of a week. We have this map with all the little roads and stuff and have figured out that if we park up and walk into the woods for about 6 miles, that will have a good spot away from everything. The nearest road is the one that we'll be leaving, and the only thing near enough to see the light of any fire we have is this cycling path that won't be in use at night. So we park up, reverse the car into the trees a bit so it's harder to see, and we get our stuff from the boot. Ryan has an old gym shoe that we hang from a branch to help us locate the car when we walk back, and we tie up bits of ribbon as we go to help us find our way back too. We walk for about 6 miles or so, and can't find a decent spot to set up, so we push on for another half a mile and find the perfect spot next to a river. The river is being generous, I guess. It's more of a small creek or a little creek. We think that it's one of the little feeders that eventually ends up in one of the locks. It has this nice flattish open ground and leads down into the creek, and trees are all around us. There's no sign of any people. It's in the middle of a little depression with slight hills all around us. It's a perfect spot, like I said. We set up our bivvies and we unpack our stuff. We all brought knives, and we have a wire saw, and I brought a hatchet too since I'm the designated fireman when we camp. Ryan lugged his bow with him and keeps telling us that he's going to shoot a deer with it. And I think, yeah, whatever mate, it's a 30-pound practice bow that you picked up from next to nothing from a market somewheres. But it doesn't matter, he figures that we'll use it for tiger practice or just to pass the time since we brought about 20 arrows with it. There's plenty of wood around, so I dig out a pit and get a fire going. I stack up some so we don't have to get up again in the dark, and that's about an hour away, so... Callum starts boiling water for Irish coffee. He didn't want to bring beer since the weight to drunk ratio is shite, but we all brought whiskey. I have a little wind-up radio that we use to listen to some weird local radio station while we sit and drink. We plan to get up early to see if the creek is any good for fishing, a little bit farther down, so we turn in. I wake up at about 2 a.m. hearing noises outside the tent, and I can see a massive light. I figure someone got up and got the fire going out of boredom. I grab my torch and step outside, and I see nobody around. But somebody has definitely dumped all of our wood on the embers and the fire is raging now. I'm wondering what the hell's going on, and I hear something crash into the trees behind me. I shine the light over there, and I see nothing, but I still see the branches and some of the trees swaying. I'm freaking out slightly. I walk backwards, not taking my eyes off the trees, and I shake Chris's bivvy. I ask him if he heard anything, and he says no. He says it was probably Ryan, and when he comes back, just give him a slap for playing a silly prank and go to sleep. I throw some dirt on the fire to help it die down a bit, and I crawl back into my bag. Ryan woke me up at 5:30 by kicking me. I roll over and I ask him if he was the one that dumped the firewood on the fire last night, and he said no, don't be daft. I tell him that either way we'll have to go get more, and he tells me that he'll help if I make tea. We go and get more wood, and I'm dragging a lot of wood back to the site, and I try to look for my hatchet to split some of the bigger ones, and it's vanished. I look around the site, but I can't find it anywhere. I left it right next to the fire pit the night before. Callum and Chris are coming back from checking the creek, and they tell me that fishing is a no-go. Then I see something in the fire. My hatchet is in the pit. The handle's been burned away. Whoever threw the wood on the fire last night threw that on there too, and everyone is adamant that they didn't do it. I try and just forget about it because I'm here to have fun after all. I go out and I set some snares in the woods. It's only my second time trying it, but I had seen plenty of rabbits around. I get a bit creative and I set some spring snares too. This takes around 90 minutes as I circle the woods around the camp. I keep feeling that I'm being watched, but I shrug it off as nothing. A couple of times I hear something in the trees, but I can't see anything, so I figure that it's animals out for food, just like I am. I head back to the camp, and the others tell me that they thought that I was in the other direction because they heard someone walking around near the edge of the trees a few minutes before. I say that's weird, but I figure that it could be a deer maybe, I don't know. Ryan gets excited and grabs his bow. He's telling us that he's going to go catch us some supper. Callum goes with him. Me and Chris start boiling water and making soup and tea and stuff like that, talking about what we plan to do for the day. We're talking about nonsense and having a cigarette when we hear a scream come from the woods where the other two went. We grab our knives and run in shouting after them. We find Callum down at the bottom of this dry creek bed, shouting that he's twisted his ankle and that something pushed him. That feeling of being watched comes back, but I try my best to shrug it off. I ask him what he means that something pushed him. He said he didn't see it, that Ryan was running to keep his deer in sight and he tried to follow him. And when he got to the top of this embankment of the dry creek bed, he looked around and something shoved him from behind. Chris goes to find Ryan. I help Callum up and I walk back to the camp and sit down with him. We're waiting for what feels like ages. They come walking out of the trees, and Ryan said that he was too busy looking for the deer to see anything, and he didn't even hear Callum yell. He swore that he missed the deer by about 4 inches, but we all think, yeah, okay. We all start to settle down, and the rest of the day goes by pretty smoothly. We keep hearing the odd noise and getting that feeling of being watched. We try to go to bed, and we fall straight to sleep. I figure that I'll check my snares in the morning since I forgot to. Again, at about 2 a.m., I wake up to a scream. Not a human scream, like a fox and a bear combined. Deep, but still shrill somehow. The kind that makes your hair stand on end. And I think, there's no big animals here, what the hell is this? By the time I get dressed, everyone else is up and asking what the hell that was. It came from the east, so I did set a few snares over there, the opposite side to where Callum was pushed. We hear some branches thrashing and another scream. Chris says something about my snare nonsense actually catching something and that I should go check it. I tell him bollocks. If he wants to go check it, he can. I'm not going anywhere near that noise. So this noise carries on for a few minutes, and then everything goes deathly silent. No owls, no insects, nothing. But there's something moving in the woods. I can see a shadow, a darker patch of blackness moving through the trees. Callum says it's a deer. I asked him why it's moving around the camp in the trees when it should be walking away from us and the fire, and there's no answer. We stare at it for about 2 to 3 minutes while it stays completely still, and then it just goes back into the trees and disappears. We decide to stay up in twos in case it was a wolf after our food. We had heard stories of a few packs of wolves still in Scotland. The rest of the night passes pretty quietly, really. The next morning we all feel a bit better, and me and Ryan go check my snares. One clearly had a rabbit in it, judging from the fur, but something else has taken it. We check a few more and find nothing in those either. When we get to the area that the sounds were coming from, it gets a little bit quieter, and we both have our hands on our knives. It's a total mess. There's blood all over the snare, which has been ripped away from the small tree that I anchored it to, and the steel wire has been torn apart. There's blood all over the tree, the forest floor, and bits of weird, pale gray flesh. And I think, screw this. And we start heading back to camp, and we're really nervous and not really talking to each other. But Ryan does keep telling me that he can see something out of the corner of his eye. I don't even look. I'm just too busy being scared and not really being able to talk. We get back to the camp, and the others are nowhere to be seen. Our gear is spread out all over the campsite. Some of our clothes are in the creek. 2 of the bivvies have slash marks in them, like one of the sides slashed from one side to the other. We're on full panic mode. I have my knife in my hand. I shout for the guys. They come out after about 5 minutes. They were looking for someone. They said they heard someone shouting what sounded like help, but they couldn't make it out. They freak out too about our gear being everywhere and the campsite being trashed. We decide it's best to just bail out of there. We pack up our stuff so fast that my pack won't even fasten properly. I don't really care either. We start heading out. Ryan has his bow and is scanning the trees like he's Legolas or something from Lord of the Rings. We get to the first ribbon marking the way back, and Ryan shoots into the trees. He says he saw something following us, that it looked like a person, but they were weird and gray and much taller. So we kind of pick up the pace a bit. We can't find the second ribbon. We figured that we'll just head for stuff that looks familiar until we find the road and work from there. All of us are panicking on the inside now. Chris points to the trees, and we see our ribbon on a branch. It doesn't really look familiar, but that's why we did it. We're not country boys after all. We follow the ribbon trail for what seems like far too long, still in the forest. I'm close to a full panic now, when Ryan points off in the distance and we see his old gym shoe tied to a branch. Elation that we had lasts about 5 seconds before we notice how familiar the area is. We walk up to the shoe and look through the trees. We're back at the campsite. We can see the fire pit that we didn't fill in, and we can see the flat parts of where our bivvies were. It's officially freak-out time. Chris starts shouting into the trees. Ryan is almost crying. Me and Callum are just staring at each other. We have to get back to the car. We know that we came north from the road, so if we head south, keeping the sun on our right, we can make it back to the road and work out where the car is. Ryan is so close to losing it, asking what the hell is happening constantly. We set off, and I take his bow from him, and I put him in the middle, because I don't really feel like getting an arrow in the back if he gets twitchy. I'm not great at shooting, but if anything comes for us, I can at least try. We walk for what is probably about 3 hours. That feeling of being watched is right there the whole way back. It's suffocating. We keep hearing twigs snapping, roughly parallel to where we're walking, and we keep seeing shadows dart between the trees at about 150 meters out. It starts getting dark, and we're all tired, but we refuse to stop. The sense of total fear is just building inside of us. Several times, I actually jumped when a twig snapped, that pure fear, and then suddenly as we're walking, we stumble onto the road out of nowhere. Callum recognizes the bit of road from a fallen tree. We must be about what you Americans might say is half a mile from the car. We practically sprint the entire way. There's 3 big scratch marks down the driver's side of the car, from the front panel to the rear door, and at this point we don't give a shit. We throw our stuff in, we jump in, and we drive like maniacs until we find a town with a hotel. We get 2 rooms between us, but spend the night just drinking in one and wondering what the hell just happened to us. There's so many questions thrown around and no answers between us. That was the last time that we wild camped. I see the guys in the pub sometimes, but we never really talk about it. We just drink and talk shit like everything is fine. It's the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. So this story was sent to me by Mr. Cooper, so thank you for sending in your story, and I hope I can do it justice. It must have been over 20 years ago now, at a large lake with a big house, used as an old people's home, just outside of Norwich in East Anglia, England. This lake was for private fishing, and somehow, me, my brother and his friend, and the person who got us there, fished there with only a couple other people total, so fishing was good, and the carp were big for us. One time we fished there, we turned up early and planned to stay until dark. There was no night fishing allowed due to the old folks' home. The lake was set in front of a house in almost a large U-type formation. Large, and there were small trees that surrounded the area. The woods kept going behind the lake, and there was a path that circled it, and swims were set far apart, with a bridge over an outlet or inlet. The bridge was made out of scaffold planks, and had a scaffold pole-built balustrade. It wasn't too rickety, but when you crossed it, you always thought that you may fall into the water. Anyway, we were fishing, me and my brother, him on the lakeside nearest the house, and me over to the bridge around the corner and back. This would have been also right next to the woodland. A small path with a hill behind it laid in its way to my swim. On the way there, the hill on my right side, there were small trees and shrubs that came all the way down to the path, and they were quite thick. To get to the swim, there was a gate and a 3-bar fence on either side, so you were safe in that little area. You were fenced in. The day is drawing in, and I've caught a few bigger carp. I'm being sneaky and catching them next to a fallen tree. Darkness is coming, and my float tip beams bright because of a chemical light, so it's easy to see when it disappears with a bite. I'm sitting there, rod in hand, waiting for my next bite, when I start to feel uneasy, really uneasy. My brain is screaming at me that something is wrong. Then, from behind me, I hear some kind of movement, footfalls and twig snaps and leaves rustling. Something was definitely behind me. I felt like that something was intently watching me. I felt eyes on my back. My brain was freaking out at this time. I kept turning around as I'm sitting close to the water and the fallen wrinkled willow tree, trying to see anything. Maybe 6 feet behind me is the gate and the fence. I can see the dark woods and the bushes on the other side of maybe the 3-foot wide dirt path. Something is close. It feels close, and the air seems electrified with a presence. Now I shout to my brother on the other side of the lake, If he moves down, I can see his shadowy, familiar figure. I'm loud, and I shout that there's something around here in the bushes. It seems to be close. Then, more twig snaps, little ones. Something is gently sneaking around. I panic now, as it seems that within 12 feet of me. I grab my landing net, my rod and my reel, and put my bag on my back as quickly as I can. I shine my small torch into the darkness, but I get no eye shine. But there's definitely something there, right there, and its strong presence. You can feel it. You can almost feel its intent. I fling open the gate, and it's now almost pitch black. I look up the hill, and the trees are dark silhouettes, but you can make out the smaller trees as the under canopy. Everything long, like the net handle, the net rod, etc., I hold out in front of me, my thought being that whatever may jump out would run into them first. On reflection, my torch was crap and the little beam projected not a lot of strength, but I could make out the dirt path just a few feet in front of me. I was running as soon as that gate snapped shut with a loud click and bang. As I run, something is now accelerating behind me, but not on the path. It's now paralleling me in a small woodland, now to my left. As I run, I glance over to see small trees being knocked out of the way and shrubs moving, all with the leaves and twigs snapping under its feet. And it sounds like there's more than 2. It sounds like 4 feet. And oh crap, it's fast. I'm screaming for my brother to help me. Something's running after me. I make it down this pathway running around the lake, and I'm yelling at the thing in the bushes, hoping that if I make noise and act big it will leave me alone. I get to the corner where the bridge is, the rickety bridge, but it's right there. And the darkness, it's in the darkness, the entity, and I still can't see it, but it's flanked me. I feel like it's waiting so close to the path, too close. My scream and shouting gets louder as I grab the scaffold pole and flick all my long fishing gear behind me to stop it from jumping on my back. I'm so scared now that my adrenaline was rushing. My brain was flittering to grasp any information, my eyes stretched wide with panic. I'm trying to see the dark in the darkness. All this as the hair on my neck and arms stood up like I had been struck by lightning. I'm over the water, halfway across the fragile bridge, wobbling and my fishing gear snagging on the bushes behind me and on the side at the points as I go across. I'm almost there, I replayed in my head, over and over again. The light that came running around the corner with my brother holding it. I've never been so pleased to see him. My legs were now jelly, and I almost dropped trying to catch my breath. I'm loudly telling him that there's something back there, and moved small trees as it hit them in the dark. Maybe 30 feet of bridge and 20 feet of pathway separated us from whatever was standing there just off the path, but just enough in the woods so as to not be seen. We went back the next day, in the daylight, and found used animal lanes through the grass, and going down toward the lake, like something had used it recently, like foxes or deer, or what I know was there, the dark thing in the woods. Well, after a bit of research, local papers and eyewitnesses from other sightings gave me my clue as to what probably had followed me, what stalked me in the dark, what had sent the hairs on my neck to raise, what filled me with dread, the feeling that I was going to die, what has and is still seen in the area of Norwich, Norfolk, England, seen on local golf courses and seen near a school, was a large, abnormally large, black cat, the black leopard. Still to this day I believe that I had just escaped from a black leopard, and these ABCs, alien big cats, being non-native, are on the prowl all over the UK, but I'm not 100% sure. But something was predatory, was big and fast, and easily outran me, and was so close that it could almost touch me. On big cats in the UK, I'm 1,000% sure and believe that they are here, and that the attacks are evidence as to what have happened and have been recorded. Since then, I've done a lot of research on various subjects related to this. So, thank you for sending in your story, Mr. Cooper, and I hope I could do it justice. So, what did you think of those two stories? Let me know which one was your favorite one down in the comments. And if you have any of your own stories, then feel free to send them to the email address in the description. There's also links to support the channel in a different way if that's something you want to do as well. Also, I find stories about big cats to be pretty fascinating, really, because you have to wonder where they came from and if they are indeed like a real cat or if there's something else going on. I don't know. Now that I say that out loud, that sounds kind of crazy, but I hope you get what I mean. You know, not every, a lot of hunters that I've talked to, including myself when I used to hunt a lot more, there's always a story. Like, there's always something weird deep in the woods. And in my little area, there have been stories. There's even a video, but I would never be able to find that now. It was off a camcorder in like 2004, so she's been a while ago. And it was a video of a black cat, like a panther or whatever. And in 2018, when I was driving home one night from a city, which there's like, so the city that I'm referring to, I won't say where it is, but the city is an hour away from me because I live right in the woods. So the city's an hour from me, and I was driving back home, and I was a little over halfway home, and there's like railroad tracks, and then there's like a swamp or like a forest right after the swamp, and there's a dip in the road. And right as I came to that dip in the road, there was a big black panther that ran across the road halfway, stopped, looked at me, and then kept on going. And I've never saw it before or since in that area. So I just wanted to give my little smaller, not scary experience with a big black cat. And as for the story in Galloway National Forest, what do you think it was? Do you think it was like a Bigfoot? Do you think that it was something else? Do you think it could have been some kind of forest spirit or some kind of forest being? Maybe it was some kind of fae. You never know. Anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you for watching the video.